Okay, sorry about that. I had a phone call come in. I had to press pause for a second. Okay, I think I remember where we were at. Gary may have needed stitches after the confrontation in the hospital, and then Jenny says it served him right. And it's a good thing they had bodyguards because Kai may have wound up in jail with assault charges. And Megan says, I secretly think James and Ed let it go on a little bit longer than they should have on purpose. So is Kai okay with this, Jenny asked. I mean, he's not mad that Rhonda's pregnant. Who's he going to be mad at? Megan asked. Himself? He was just as much a participant in that choice as Rhonda was. Megan took off her shoes for a few seconds, considered throwing them at the wall or something. Instead, she rolled her socks into a ball, hurled them across the room toward the hamper, and fell back onto the sofa with a frustrated sigh. No, I think he's going to be all right. It was a shock, that's for sure, but he's committed to her. I just wish they would have gotten married first. Speaking of, Jenny grinned, raising her eyebrows up and down. What's it like being married to Ian Taylor? Megan looked away and tried to hide her expression. She wasn't going to admit out loud just how awesome it really was. It was too private. She was reminded of her conversation backstage with Rhonda before the show in Copenhagen. She thought about how she had the opportunity to experience firsthand how different Ian was after the adrenaline rush of performing live. She felt like she'd just returned from a second honeymoon and still felt a slight high from the previous night. I can't talk about that right now. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes, blocking out her present surroundings and taking herself back to his arms. Can't believe I have to wait a whole month before seeing him again, she thought. What torture. Brushing away a tear that had fallen without permission, Megan stood up and shook her head slightly. I have a 9 o'clock class in the morning, I think. What day of the week is it again? Without waiting for an answer, Megan walked into the bathroom to shower off the grime of airplanes, terminals, and a 3-hour taxi ride from Detroit Metro. It was time to stop the tears and refocus on school. After missing a week of classes, she was going to have a hard time and serious makeup work to tackle. As she tried to pull herself together, her whisper and the few remaining tears that fell were hidden by a cascade of steam and water. I miss you, Ian. All right, let's deal with the elephant in the room, Megan sighed in exasperation. Yes, I got married over Christmas break, and I'm sorry I didn't tell any of you. There were obvious reasons why I couldn't. She spoke quickly and dismissively as if to say, nothing to see here, let's get on with the lesson. But she had a feeling she wasn't going to get away that easily. The whole congregation had been staring at her since church began, and now during opening announcements in their women's group, the Relief Society leader in charge of conducting the meeting asked if anyone had anything they'd like to share. Usually someone would tell about some spiritual missionary experience they'd had over the past week, and everyone would smile and nod and compliment her on being so brave as to share the gospel with a coworker or friend. Today, all eyes turned to Megan, as if they were expecting her to tell them what really happened that led her to being on stage in Copenhagen with a rock star for a husband when none of them even knew she had a boyfriend. One older lady, who obviously hadn't seen the YouTube video or heard the gossip yet, spoke with love and excitement in her voice. Congratulations, dear, that's so exciting. Her face dropped and her voice lowered with a bit of horror. You're not pregnant, are you? Some people in the room chuckled and Megan gasped. No, I just needed to keep it a secret for a little while so I could lead a normal life for a bit longer. You see, my husband is kind of famous. Kind of? Another woman corrected and turned to the older lady. He's a famous rock star who brought her out on stage last week in Copenhagen. It wasn't that big of a deal, Megan grumbled as she shrunk away from her embarrassment. Oh, my grandson served his mission in Denmark, the older lady said. He wrote me the nicest letters. Well, the Relief Society leader started, this is a lovely topic of conversation, but we should probably get on with the lesson. Sister Adams fumbled with her lesson manual and instructed them to turn to Chapter 14, but she looked up with panic in her eyes. Chapter 14 was titled, Marriage and Family Ordained of God. Megan inwardly groaned, wondering how this day could get any worse. The teacher tried very hard to keep the lesson on track, but it really wasn't working. It seemed that every subheading in the chapter led the discussion right back to everyone glancing at Megan out of the corners of their eyes. Finally, about 20 minutes into the lesson, Sister Adams tossed the manual on the table and looked directly at Megan. I give up, she sighed. Could you please just tell us the whole story and put us out of our misery? You're in misery? Megan glanced nervously around the room. We're all dying to know what really happened. A younger lady looked over at her apologetically, pleading with her eyes. And I must admit, I'm desperately jealous. India? You are jealous? Of me? Megan looked over at the most beautiful girl in their young single adult group and shook her head. You are everything guys want. You're tall and thin and glamorous and... Yes, I know, India said, rolling her eyes. I'm a beautiful giraffe. You don't see any guys lining up to marry giraffes. Something about the way she had described herself caught Megan by surprise, and she and India both started laughing. Actually, I think I have just the guy to introduce you to, Megan grinned. Since the time she'd met Ian's bodyguard, Megan had wanted to find Ed a date so he'd have someone to hang out with, following Ian around. India was perfect for him, and he was plenty tall enough for her. Megan planned to play matchmaker when Ed came back to Michigan. But first, I'll tell you the tale of an odd couple of boys who showed up at church one day when I was visiting my aunt's house. Megan proceeded to spin a lively rendition of her recent past in a way she hoped made them all more comfortable with the known outcome. That Sunday's lesson was supposed to teach them about the importance of marriage and family. Instead, the class was entertained by a very young and relatively famous bride named Megan. 4 long weeks of trying to get caught up on her schoolwork was wearing on Megan. She dragged herself into the lobby of her dorm building, planning to go upstairs and grab a snack before heading off to the next class. Megan stopped walking when she noticed 3 things almost simultaneously. The first was that someone was playing the piano. That was not normal. The second was that there were a lot of people in the lobby. That also was not normal. Usually people were coming and going on their way to class, but today they were sitting and listening to the guy at the piano. The third thing she noticed was she recognized the song he was playing because it was written for her. The Central Michigan University baseball cap turned backward didn't fool any of them. This young man was not a student, and they all knew exactly who he was. Megan didn't waste a minute listening from the doorway. She strode right over to him, wrapped her arms around his shoulders, and kissed his neck. Like a true professional, Ian took 10 seconds to finish the song he'd been playing, stood up, and wrapped his arms around his wife, picking her completely off the floor. She let her backpack slip off her shoulder as her lips met his, and they held each other firmly for half a minute before he set her down and looked at her. "What did you do?" she asked. "Take a red-eye last night?" "I left as soon as the show was over. I just couldn't wait one more day to see you." "Anybody else come with you?" Megan didn't even look around to find out because she had no desire to break eye contact. "I'm not even sure they were off the stage yet when I hopped into the limo," Ian said. "Rhonda and Kai will be here in a couple of days. They want to go visit her mom in Lansing first." "I've missed you so much." The longing she felt was reflected right back in his eyes, and he finally broke eye contact long enough to press his lips to hers again. His hands grasped her hair, and he held her so tightly it felt like he'd never let go. Finally, someone in the room whistled suggestively, and someone else called, "Get a room!" "What a great idea," Ian said, laughter sparkling in his eyes. Those who were close enough to hear him laughed as well. He lowered his voice so only she could hear him. "Want to go check into our hotel room?" "I have class in an hour," Megan gasped. "I cannot skip microbiology again. I'm already on the verge of not graduating because of this class." "I'll come with you," Ian whispered, "because I don't ever want to be away from you again for another minute." "I wish I could sneak you upstairs." "I haven't been to your dorm room since our honeymoon." "You haven't been to America since our honeymoon." "I have an idea that could work. Do you still have a stack of my CDs in your room?" "Of course." She saw his plan. "Because you never know when you might need to give one away." Follow my lead, of course. Follow my lead, okay? Ian asked. Forever, Megan stated. Thank you, everyone, for coming to my impromptu concert, Ian called out to the people in the room, pretty much all women. Several people chuckled, and Ian wrapped his arm around Megan's waist. I think you've all met my wife. She's going to take me on a little tour of your beautiful campus and drag me with her to class so I can learn a little about microbiology. Let's hope I survive. Wish me luck. Shoulders slumped and faces pouted as Ian abandoned his audience and led Megan over to the counter of the lobby where the gatekeeper sat between them and Megan's dorm room. Hi, Karen, Megan said. Have you met my husband, Ian? Yes, Karen replied. I've been enjoying his piano all afternoon. You like my music? Ian leaned closer to her over the counter and smiled down at her. I saw you in concert last summer, Karen smiled back, in Detroit. Hey, that was the day after I met Megan. Ian looked over at his wife before turning back to Karen. Did I seem like I was in a particularly good mood that night? Karen laughed along with him, eyes sparkling, clearly smitten by his charm. Do you have my new CD? He asked. Not yet. Karen batted her eyelashes at him. It was almost embarrassing how well this was working. I'll have to get you one sometime, Ian said. Hey, Megan interjected. She placed her hand on his arm as if to get his attention. I have a couple of them upstairs. You could sign one for her. What a great idea, Ian said. We have to go grab your stuff to head over to class anyway. Yeah, I should probably get a few things packed real quick, too. I'll sign while you pack. Ian turned back to Karen. Are you going to be here for a few more minutes? I'll be here until 7, Karen assured him. Oh, it won't take that long. Ian raised his eyebrows. We have to get to class in a few minutes. See you in a little while, Karen. With that, he tucked his arm around Megan's waist, and she led the way to the elevator. When the elevator door closed, Ian pushed Megan against the wall in a very passionate kiss. He pulled away long enough to ask Megan a question. What do you think I should write on her CD? Thank you for coming to my concert, or thank you for giving me an hour alone with my wife? I know what I'm thinking, but it's probably not appropriate to write on the CD. They chuckled as the elevator door opened and practically ran down the hall to her room. That's the end of chapter 7. I hope you like this video and like the video series. Hope you give it a thumbs up and share it and subscribe to my channel. And I'll see you at the beginning of chapter 8.